Hello and welcome, yogis and yoginis. Are you ready to journey deeper into your spiritual practice? Well, based on my many years of teaching meditation and working really closely with clients, I've noticed one really crucial element on the path of awakening that can be a real big sticking point, and it's consistency of spiritual practice. So in this video, I'm going to address this challenge head on by showing you a fourfold path of your spiritual practice, and I'm going to give you like this map of the stages of your spiritual practice and also provide you with some really practical solutions so that you can avoid common pitfalls. And you can think of each of these stages of practice as a stepping stone to deeper wisdom and spiritual growth. So my goal here is to really help you navigate your path of practice so that you can ensure that your practice is consistently enriching and deeply transformative. So before we dive in, be sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, because I publish videos just like this one on a regular basis. So with that, let's go ahead and dive in. All right, so like I said, this is like a map for you. And as I'm going through each of these phases of spiritual practice, what I would love for you to do is just to think about right now, where do you fit in to these phases? Like, which one do you find yourself in? And even before I go into this, you should really do an assessment. Like, what is your spiritual practice right now? How often are you practicing right now? Those are really like, that's where our beginning point. What is your spiritual practice and how often are you practicing? Great. So you have that, you know that in your mind. Let's look at each of these phases of spiritual practice. So the very first phase of spiritual practice is what I would call the initiation phase. And this is where you're learning a practice fresh from the start. Like, this is a new practice for you and you're learning it. You're embracing the challenge of the practice. You're embracing the unfamiliarity of this new spiritual practice. And in this phase, in the initiation phase, practice is quite mechanical, and that is normal. It's fine. It has to be that way in the beginning because you're just learning. So it's very mechanical, and you're not going to see any benefits. Hate to say it, but you're not going to see any benefits from your practice yet because you are just learning the practice and you're not going to see the benefits or the fruits of the practice. So the danger of this phase of practice is over intellectualizing. Maybe I might call it the intellectualizing trap. And it's this tendency to overthink or over conceptualize your practice, really like being in your head about the practice and trying to figure it all out and get it perfect or figure out what you're doing wrong in the practice. So that is a big pitfall of this first phase of practice. And it can lead to the unfortunate experience of abandoning the practice altogether and thinking to yourself, this practice doesn't work for me, or I just don't like this practice, so I'm not going to do it. And that's a very, very big danger. So this first phase, the initial phase of our practice and learning practice, is key. Like, if you can get past this first phase, it's your road is golden ahead of you, but not many people get past this first phase. So what can you do to avoid this trap of over intellectualizing and just sort of giving up because you're not seeing any results? So number one, you can really focus on experiential learning at this point over intellectual understanding. So if you're working with a good teacher, they're going to guide you and they're probably going to say, yes, you need to understand it, but don't think too much about it. So really focus just on the experience of the practice versus over intellectualizing and trying to overthink it. Next is commit to a regular practice. If you're only doing your practice once a week in the meditation class that you go to at your yoga studio, that's not going to get you results. You have to do your practice every day, and it doesn't have to be long. You've heard this before. Every spiritual teacher says this. Just a few minutes a day to get the ball rolling. Eventually, yes, it would be great if you worked up to 20 or 30 minutes a day, but you don't need to start there. You can start with 10 minutes, 15 minutes a day, but commit to that regular practice and one spiritual practice, not a bunch, just one spiritual practice. Trusting that with practice, you're going to find familiarity and ease with it will also help you. So just know in your mind, okay, I'm going to trust this process. The more I do it, the more familiar I'm going to become with it, the easier it's going to get for me. The other thing that you can do to avoid the pitfall of just giving up is to stay open and curious during this particular phase as you're learning your practice, rather than striving and thinking I have to master it immediately. That's just not going to happen. It takes some time. Okay, so let's look at level 2, or the second phase of practice. And the second phase of practice is what I call the integration phase. Now, during the integration phase of practice, what's happening is you're acquiring this internalized understanding of the practice. You're moving beyond just concepts of the practice and into more experiential comprehension of the practice. So you're really having an internalized, like I said, an internalized understanding of the practice. Maybe you're beginning to have a felt sense of how the practice actually works within you. You're not seeing probably the benefits of practice yet, and I hate to say that because people like to think I want to see the benefits right away, but you got to be patient here. Still in this phase of practice, you may be seeing benefits, but you might not be seeing benefits. If you're not seeing benefits, that is so normal. So I want to just put your mind at ease. If you think, wow, I've been doing this for a while and I'm not seeing anything, don't worry. Just keep doing it. Trust the process, okay? Now, the danger in this phase of practice is going on autopilot and just falling into a routine, getting really bored with your practice. Oh my gosh, I get up every morning at 6:30. I do my practice for 20 minutes and it's just another thing on my to-do list to check off. So that can be a real danger in this phase of practice. It can lead to a lack of real genuine presence and engagement with the practice. So to overcome this, to antidote this particular pitfall of this phase, mindfulness is going to be key at this stage. So what I mean is that it's going to be really important to stay present and aware during your practice. So you're not nodding off, you're catching yourself if you're starting to daydream, you're not doing a sleepitation. That's what I always say to my students. Look, we're not going into meditation to fall asleep here and relax so much that you're not getting anything out of it. So stay present, stay aware. Maybe you're at a phase, just as another piece for this, if it's becoming too comfortable, I would recommend sitting in a different way. Use a chair, stay away from the back of your chair if you've normally been meditating on the couch, for instance. Or don't lay down during your meditation so it's not turning in again to a sleep meditation. Do things in your posture, in your sitting posture, that are going to keep you alert and aware. Also, occasionally changing up your routine with the practice. So if you're always practicing in the morning, maybe switch it up to practicing at night, just for a few days, just to switch it up a little. And I do this as well. My normal routine is to practice right when I wake up in the morning, but every once in a while, I'll go do my workout first, and then I'll come back from my workout and meditate after my workout. So this is just going to prevent your practice from becoming stale. This is also a really good time to begin integrating reflective inquiry, reflective journaling. So after your meditation, journal a little bit. It'll help you to deepen your understanding of this process that's happening in you through the practice. So level 3 or phase 3 of our practice is what I call the embodiment phase of practice. Now, this is a time where you've been focused on a particular practice, you've stuck with it, and now you're at this phase where the practice has actually become internalized to the point where when you sit down to practice, it feels alive within you. It feels like the practice is literally practicing you. You're not doing the practice, it's doing you. So that is a very real and felt experience that you'll have during this phase. And also, if you make it to this phase, you're beginning to see the benefits of your practice. You are starting to see things change in your life. You're starting to feel those changes within yourself. So that's sort of the payoff for getting to this phase of your practice. You're starting to see the benefits of it at this point. Now, the danger of this phase, I would say, I call the pitfall, the plateau pitfall. And it's this pitfall where you think, I've totally mastered this practice, I've got it. And so then what happens is it leads to this premature disengagement from your practice and then a potential backsliding or plateauing of your practice. So that's why I'm calling it the plateau pitfall. So to antidote this, or to make sure that this doesn't happen, you're going to want to adopt a particular mindset, especially during this phase. And the mindset is one of continual growth and understanding that the spiritual journey and our spiritual practice is not a destination. It is a journey. It's ongoing and it doesn't stop. There is no ending of your spiritual practice. Even for enlightened masters, they talked about it all the time. They still did their spiritual practice because if you don't, there is this pitfall of just sliding back. So this is a really, really good time to go back to beginner's mind, adopt beginner's mind, approach the practice as if you've never done it before. This is also a really good time to go back to the real basics of practice as well, like exploring just what it's like to sit and feeling your body on the ground, noticing your breath. So bringing back the real elementary aspects of meditation practice can be very, very good at this point. And then finally, if you're at this point and haven't already found a community or a group that you can practice with, this is going to be really critical. Now, I would say you should, from the very beginning, have a community or a group that you practice with. But most of us, that's just not a reality. However, if you get to this point in your practice, to this phase of your practice, you will need a community. You're going to need a group that can help provide you with some mutual support and, help maintain your motivation and engagement with your practice. And then the final phase of our spiritual practice journey is what I would call the living reality phase of practice. And this is the part of the phase during which our practice has become fully integrated and is reflected in every moment of our life, not just when we sit down to practice. So at this phase of practice, your life becomes an expression of your practice. Your life is your practice. Practice isn't dedicated to just the 20 minutes in the morning and in the evening or whenever you do your practice. It is always happening in you, through you, as you. Now, the danger of this particular phase is the illusion of completion, which is very similar to the previous phase, but this is even more of a pitfall in this phase because you've gotten to this point where you can feel the practice, practicing you during your entire day. And it's easy to think, I've completely mastered everything. I don't need practice at all anymore. And that's a very, very dangerous place to be, because you lose sight of the you lose sight of its applications. You lose sight of how to consciously apply it in your life. And then what that does is it undermines all of the benefits that you've been receiving from practice. So of course, in this phase, you're also experiencing the benefits of the practice, and we're hoping that those benefits, that in experiencing the benefits of the practice, the fruits of the practice, it is enough motivation. It's that internal motivation to keep you wanting to practice. But there can be that illusion of, I'm done. I don't have any more to do. I'm over it. So to antidote this, assuming you're already regularly practicing, you're doing it every day, now more than ever, it's so important to have regular reflection on your practice and observing its impacts, the little subtle nuances of its impacts during your daily life, which is going to help you maintain that conscious connection and application of your practice. This phase, if you don't already have this, you absolutely, at this phase, I'm going to say you need a spiritual mentor or teacher. And this can be controversial. There's a lot that's been written about this around the student-teacher relationship. But on the spiritual path, at some point, you have to have a mentor. You have to have a spiritual teacher, someone who can guide you. And there comes a point when just watching the YouTube videos and reading the books are not going to be enough for you to get transmission of the full benefits of the practice. And I say this from my own personal experience, and also what I see students who come and work with me, or clients who come and work with me. There's a huge shift that happens when you commit to working with a mentor. When you commit to, okay, I've gotten all I can get from the YouTube videos, I've gotten all I could get from the books and the seminars where the guru is teaching, but I don't have that one-to-one interaction. I have the view that that personalized interaction is critical to your spiritual growth and to your spiritual practice, because at this point, your spiritual mentor is going to be able to tell you if you're doing the appropriate practices or not. So if you haven't gotten to that point, if you're at this point and you're like, oh, I still don't have a spiritual teacher or mentor, now is the time for that. This also, like I said, it allows for that dialogue, which can't happen when you're watching videos or just doing a massive seminar where there's 100 or 300 people in the workshop or the seminar. The last thing that I want to say about this particular phase is that it becomes very important, again, to be in spiritual community, to have a kula, to have community where you are interacting with other people who are on the same spiritual path as you, and you're sharing your experiences, because sharing your experiences, it's going to reaffirm your own understanding of the practice, of the path, and of your own commitment to your awakening. Now, I want you to remember that each of these stages, it has its own unique challenges, and you're going to go through all of these challenges. Knowing this ahead of time is going to allow for you to have sustained spiritual growth, which is the purpose of spiritual practice. It's going to help you to avoid stagnation. It's going to help you to avoid boredom and the mistaken belief that you've already achieved, you've already mastered it all, which will keep your practice alive alive and juicy and enriching and ever evolving. So I hope this was of help and of benefit to you. And until we meet next time, take care and namaste.